What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. Today is a pretty exciting day. I'm pretty stoked, I'm not gonna lie. I'll be throwing on some American Venture Lab inner fender liners, quick release fender liners, as well as the Quake LED smoke turn signals. They are a newer version. I've had the regular kind of clear versions on a few past JLs. I love the product. I mean, it's all plug and play. It doesn't mess with the CAN bus system. I don't get any hyper flashing issues when it comes to obviously running them on any of the JLs that I've had. So today I'm going to walk you through the removal of the front and rear fender liners as well as the fender flares themselves, because there's a little bit of work that needs to be done on the front ones just to kind of clean them up before I throw them back on. And then I'm going to take some measurements so I can show you the difference with the way it sits now. It's got, I remember if you guys have tuned in previously, it's got a 2.5 inch rock crawler kit on it right now, 37s, and some 17-inch KMC wheels. So I'll take some before and after measurements just to show you guys the difference. I mean, obviously removing that plastic trim, I guess you could call it, in the fender, in my opinion, kind of cleans it up a little bit and gives a little bit more space in the wheel well, so a little bit more flexibility off-road, kind of tucking the tires, which once I get this thing kind of dialed in the way that I want it, waiting on a few last parts for the front end, I'm really gonna kind of put it to the test, in my opinion, for what I'm gonna use it for. I'm not gonna do any kind of crazy, gnarly off-roading, but my goal is to take the Jeep to the trail, have fun, enjoy it, have a kick-ass day, and then drive it home. So again, nothing too crazy, but I just want something that will do what I want it to do and do it comfortably without compromising anything. So let's get started. So first things first, let's take some before and after measurements up front. So right here. All right guys, so like I had mentioned earlier, I'm gonna take a before and after measurement so you can physically see the difference height-wise between the liner and the tire. Remember, it's got a 2.5 inch rock crawler kit. I've got 37 1350 Nitto ridge grapplers on it right now, the way that it sits. So to give you a before and after, I think some people, obviously it benefits them because you don't have to lift the Jeep up any higher as far as the lift kit goes and still get a little bit more flexibility out of it. So before measurement, if we kind of try to go from dead center tire wise to the bottommost portion of the liner, looks to be about 9 3/4, which isn't too bad. So I'll make sure to get an after measurement, front passenger side, probably get it on more of a level surface, and then we'll take another measurement in between here just to kind of see how much more space we actually pick up, how much more usable area we actually pick up when I actually get that put on. So let's get the Jeep inside. We'll get everything unboxed. I'll show you guys the parts. I'm super excited to show you. I've never had any issues with this combination. This will be, I believe, the 3rd or 4th JL that I've ran this similar style setup on, and I've been happy with every single one of them. Install, obviously I had my learning curve with both parts, so today should hopefully go a lot smoother. Now, as you guys saw, and for those of you that are familiar with the JLs and the JTs, the Gladiators and the Wranglers, you have LED or halogen turn signals. There are plenty of companies that make really nice clear amber lenses, replacements for them. I just don't care for the big bulkiness of it, honestly. So my plan, again, for probably the 50th time today, is I'm gonna take all this off. It's all coming out. The liner, the lights are getting replaced. Did the before measurement, 9 3/4 from plastic to tire. Further, or I should say the lowest hanging plastic right here on the flare itself. So for starters, we've got the Quake LED kit. Show you guys a picture on the box. So they kind of replaced the factory DRLs and the turn signals, which are kind of nice. These are the smoked versions, so hopefully they'll match the theme of the Jeep as far as kind of having the blacked out look to it. Not trying to go too bright. Let's see how these bad boys look. Because again, this is my first set of actually having the smoked DRLs. Prior to, I've always had the clear versions, which work just fine and look pretty freaking awesome. So I'm not complaining by any means. But first look at these. I gotta tell, I cannot wait to get these on the Jeep. So this would be the passenger side, but check this out, guys. Look at this. I mean, yeah, I think that'll match the Jeep pretty nice. So I can't wait to get these things thrown on, turned on, see how they look. Obviously they are DOT compliant. They do have the DOT stamp on the front. So I'm pretty excited. So passenger side, put this stuff back in here, and then let's get to unboxing some American Adventure Lab goodness. Yeah, those are pretty slick. Now, these I've been waiting for a hot minute. One of the nice things with American Adventure Lab is obviously they do make quick release inner fender liners for different power plants in the Wranglers and the JTs, the Gladiators, which is nice. So this particular kit, obviously for $392, I honestly don't know what the big difference is. I couldn't tell you because I don't know, and I certainly don't want to give you misinformation. But the cool thing is I know that they'll fit, because again, this is my third or fourth set that I've had on a Wrangler, on a JL, and every one of them has just, the final fit and finish is awesome. The powder coating is awesome. All the hardware is there. Sometimes they give you a couple extra because, well, I'm human and I lose things and I mess things up. So it is awesome. This is a good company. I'm not sponsored or endorsed by them by any means, but they are made here in America, and I'm a huge fan of supporting smaller businesses. So with that being said, let's unbox all the goodness inside here. Kind of run through. I kind of already unboxed it, but I didn't really take a whole lot out. So here's all the hardware to throw the new ones on there. A couple stickers. Looks like it's got a little key ring tag, which is kind of cool. All black. The hardware is all black as well, so the actual quick release tabs themselves are all black. Comes with nutserts to obviously put on the, basically all the way around front and rear, driver and passenger side, so that gives you a little bit more support when you're actually running just the flare itself as opposed to having all the plastic inner liner and everything too. So nice little bag of hardware there. And then you've got all the pieces. Now, if my memory serves me correctly, there are 3 pieces that you do have to put together for the front driver and front passenger. And I believe there's 2 for the rear, but just on the safe side, I will make sure to walk you guys and gals through all that. But I mean, the packaging, super nice. I mean, obviously they don't want the powder coating to ruin before it gets to you. So this is everything. Got all the hardware you need here, all the pieces wrapped up super nice. And then these bad boys, if I'm not mistaken, are actually for the rear and for the front. These are actually the pieces for the front, these little pieces right here, and then these sections back here, the bigger pieces go in the rear, so they give you a little bit of extra bracing and support for the rear fenders. So now the tedious task is taking the front liners and rear liners off without scratching the flares themselves, because they are painted to match. All right, ladies and gents, so here's what I'll be using to take the rear liner out as well as the fender flare. I've got a 1/8 drill bit that I'll be using to drill out all these plastic rivets, make it easier as opposed to trying to split them and break them. Pop that on my trusty DeWalt. I've got my trim prying tool that I'll be using, so once I kind of get the lip up with my screwdriver with the bend on the end, I'll pull all those out, and then I'll start working on taking the liner out itself, and then we'll get to the flare afterwards. Hopefully I can get these to come apart separately. In my previous in my previous installs, I've actually taken it all off at one time, but I didn't have painted flares when I did them. So to start on the liner, I just put my hand in back here. Obviously I've got all the fasteners removed, and I drilled out the plastic rivets that hold this up here, so it makes it a little bit easier. So I'm basically going to peel this whole thing back and just kind of take it out, and then I'm going to work on taking the flare off. Now, as you guys can see, these are those plastic clips that I was telling you about. They are nice, they do a great job. They are kind of a pain in the butt, and there's quite a few of them up in there. I mean, there's just the 2 that you can see, or 3 I should say. So And then this little plastic piece down here was the piece I was telling you about that helps brace the flare on here, and then obviously has another mount for the liner itself. So I'm gonna get this taken out right now, and then we'll work on removing the flare, and I will try not to break it. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is your inner rear driver's side plastic flare. So I got the flare off. Here's the back side of the flare. There's two more little plastic rivets that help hold these supports on it. You do have to drill out because this has to come off, because this whole the lower section of the flare itself kind of peels out from the inside of the flare. So I'm gonna drill these out, and then I'm gonna kind of pry them apart and try to be a little more careful than I've been. God, kind of like a bull in a china shop is what I've been told. So let's get those done. So your flares are two pieces, right? You have the main piece that everyone sees, and then you've got the inner piece or the lower piece. Now, once you get those two brackets pulled apart, it's kind of a pain in the butt, to be honest with you right now, but they do have to come apart, and you do have to use a little bit of force. Now, on the ones that I've done in the past, I usually start at one end, start kind of peeling back a little bit, and then it all kind of follows suit. So what I'm going to try to do right now is that same thing. And that is to split this right here. And as you guys heard, it starts kind of letting go. What you're left with is your fender flare with these tabs. You're gonna have to trim all these tabs off, but that's not a big deal. And then the lower section that I'm getting rid of. And there you go. Kind of 101 on how you split your painted or two-piece flares on a JL or JT. And what I'll do also is I'm going to pull these little clips out so I can reuse them, so I don't have to get quite as many when I put these back on after I get the rear inner liners done. Passenger side's just the same. I'll clean this up real nice. The nice thing with these flares too being painted, and I don't know if it's 392 specific or just painted flares in general, they do have a nice little clear bra on the front side of them, which is kind of cool, so a little bit easier to distinguish. So here's what we've got. I trimmed all these little clips that wind here that helped hold the flare onto the plastic piece that kind of sat inside here. So this is done, ready to rock and roll. I've got all the clips off of it. I've got these little clips that are on the front side taken off. I'll get it cleaned up, Make sure I didn't miss any little spots where I trimmed the clips off, which actually looks like I did a pretty good job first go around, which is cool. I'll take it. And then I will get to work on throwing the hardware on here so we can put the support on, the bracket. All right, so here's where I'm at. I got all 13 nutserts in, as you guys can see, all installed front to back. Now, what they tell you to do in the old instructions is, I'm gonna take the front piece for the support for the quick release liners. I'm gonna pop it up here, pop this little M6 bolt in here, like so. I'll show you guys, make sure everything lines up. You got these little M6 bolts to hold them in place. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reinstall the flare itself with the hardware, and I'll show you there's actually a little plastic spacer that helps line up on the inside of the liner, on the inside of the flare, I'm sorry, on the inside of each flare. So that way, like so. Make sure all those line up, which they do. I'm going to pop the flare back on. Now there's a piece that actually mounts down in the bottom down here, and I'll show you guys once I get to that. That way when I throw the inner liner in, it actually has quite a few different points of contact to help hold it in place securely. Looks good, fit and finish is awesome. So I'll get this piece off like I'd mentioned earlier, and then I will throw the flare back on, and I'll show you guys how easy that is to do. Obviously, I mean, it kind of looks as if it's pretty easy. You're gonna pop out a bunch of, I think they're M6, like 20 bolts. And once they all line up, the flare will be secure. Then I can get to the liner, then it's done. So it really doesn't take this long, but if I can save you guys some headaches, might as well. Now, there are two openings we're gonna leave open on the supports themselves, because the fender flare does have two kind of big plastic pins, I guess, to help line it up perfect on the body. So let me show you those real quick. And then what I'm gonna do, so you've got one pin back here. So obviously this is on the front driver, and then this is for the rear. So as you guys can tell, those two still get reused, okay? So I'm gonna kind of set this up on here, like so. And like I said, they help, but they don't do a perfect job, but it's better than nothing. Now, the trick to this, if there is a trick, is to start kind of getting all your nuts and bolts set in there. So let me show you. Let me get one of these set in here real quick. And then I'll show you exactly what I'm doing. Because they have these really cool little little pieces that bolt on there. And then everything else just kind of falls into place. So let me show you guys. So you've got these little pieces, right? Seeing they have these little ledges on them. Now these little pieces right here line up on the inside of the fender flare and openings that are already pre-existing, which is cool. And these bad boys screw in through here like so and hold the flare onto the body with the provided nutserts that I already popped in and showed you guys that earlier. And there's 13 of them on this side, and then obviously it's another 13 on the passenger side. So the good thing about these, and let me show you, okay, is these little holes right here, okay, are what those little plastic pieces actually kind of snap into, and then you pop your bolts in there. So I'm gonna basically get all these done all the way across, right, and then down over here towards the front. and then I'll tighten them down once I kind of get them finger tight. So the goal here is to make sure that everything lines up and get all of them in the best that I can. So obviously starting off up there, my next plan of attack would be down here on the driver's side towards the front. All right guys, so I have the fender flare put back on. Got the M6 bolts in there with the cool little plastic brackets that kind of help secure it, add a little bit of structural rigidity to the fender flare itself, and then obviously the mounting brackets both front and back on the driver's side. So, all right guys, so I got the driver's side done. I got the passenger side plastic piece taken out from right here. This bracket actually used to kind of sit out here kind of flush, so I got that bent back, just kind of cleaned it up. I got the mounting hardware in there for the passenger flare. Got all the bolts and nuts and bolts and the little brackets popped in there. Again, remember these little plastic pieces slide into the two openings on each side of the factory flare where they mount prior to any of this stuff going on. So got all that done. Got all the M6s in there, both sides, everything's good to go. There was one piece that I forgot to mention on the driver's side. On the driver's side, it's for the lower mounts for the quick release. I know it's not black, it's supposed to be black, but you know, it happens. There's actually 3 mounts on the passenger side, so you have back, middle, and front. And then obviously these are for the quick release tabs on the bottom. On the driver's side, there's only 2 mounts, one on each opposing side. And the nice thing is these do just mount into factory locations, which is kind of cool. So, and these again already have the nutserts inserted in there, so you just line it up and then screw them in. So I've got the flare on, separated, just like we did on the driver's side. Obviously it's a little dirty up in there, but it is what it is. Got everything wiped down, got everything cleaned up. I got the flare ceramic coated, so I did end up ceramic coating the flare just with some added stuff I had sitting in my garage, just to kind of give it a little added layer of protection. So now I'm going to take that and mount it in here. Now, there are a couple different spots in here that I have to focus on. The rear section's a little tougher, at least for me to mount up. So I'll probably start back there. And then you do have obviously the 2 up top. You've got one over here, and then you've got another mount right over here. And then you have another one down below there. And then obviously the 2 down there. So I'm gonna grab that bad boy right now, and I'm gonna try to line it up and get it set in there. And then I will make sure to get some video and show you guys the final product. And then it's time to start on the front end. Alright guys, so a little disclaimer, I had videoed everything as far as the front install goes, from the removal of the front factory fender, taking the factory LED light out, separating the lower plastic portion from the top portion, the whole 9 yards start to finish. Unfortunately, I deleted it. So I'm just gonna kind of walk you through as far as the install goes up front. It doesn't differ a whole lot from the rear. Biggest difference is obviously the Quake LED turn signal setup. You do have to drill a little hole in the outside of the fender itself, so that way it can actually mount to the bracket, so it gives you a little bit more rigidity up front. And then the Quake LED does mount to 2 factory locations on here as well. So I'm gonna walk you through and show you what exactly it was that I did. If you watched the first half of the video and saw how I removed the rear fenders and split the plastic lower section from the top section, the front is very, very similar. And then obviously I did have to trim off all the tabs that were kind of on that kind of helped hold the outside of the lower section of plastic to the top piece. That was super easy. So again, if you saw the first half of the video with the rear, the front half's pretty similar. So I'll show you exactly what I did up front, where I mounted the brackets at, how easy they are to mount, and then last but not least, reinstalling the liner back into the wheel well and show you guys the final product. So let's get started. All right guys, so here's what I did to start the front end off after I'd taken everything off and split the fender. So before putting the fender back on, I mounted the Quake LED light. Now to do that, Quake provides you with this new hardware to mount the actual light itself onto these 2 factory locations. I took the wiring from the light itself and ran it right above in here, and then I ended up running it in between the front panel right here of the body of the Jeep, and then there's like a support bracket behind here, and then plugged it in back here. I actually pulled the wiring down. I do have it zip tied up top really nicely, but I pulled it down so you guys can see it. It is all plug and play and easy to go. And then up top, there is a bracket that American Venture Lab provides you with that actually sits in between this front piece of the body and then this support back here that actually helps hold this section of the top of the fender on. And then down below, there's another bracket for the driver's side from American Venture Lab that you actually use the self-tapping bolts they provide you with to go into the frame for the front lower sections of the new inner liner for the quick release kit. Then moving out back, there is another bracket that sits up here. Again, this one goes in between the body right here and then the support bracket behind it. So you've got another point of contact for a quick release. And then down below, right here, is the last one. There's actually a plastic piece that sits on here with two plastic retainers that you actually take out. And then again, American Venture Lab provides you with this nice hardware to mount this last bracket for the lower section of the new inner liner. So with that being said, I put those in there. I did reuse a few of the factory clips on the front liner itself just to help give it a little bit more support. So I ended up reusing a total of 5. So I've got one up front, I've got one back here, and then inside the wheel liner itself, I used 3 down the backside, again, just to kind of give it a little bit of extra rigidity. And that's pretty much that, guys. I mean, aside from having to drill out a little hole right here, so that way the light actually mounts on the inside of the front fender just to give it a little bit more of a stable surface to sit on. That's really it. I mean, it really is a pretty easy process, a little time consuming, but the final result is pretty stellar. I also had to, I don't know if you guys remember in the rear, but there's these little clips on the fenders itself that help hold the top piece to what was the lower piece of the flare that I actually had to trim off. They run all down the inside lip of the top of the fender in the front, just like in the rear. But that is kind of how it finished off. That's how it looks before you actually reinstall the liner itself. So now I'm gonna toss the liner in there. They provide you with these bad boys right here. Let me see what size these are. These are actually a 5mm. So I just threw them on my wrench right here, and I'll pop those in. And the nice thing with these two is once you actually, let's see if I can get them in focus. Once you actually mount these in there, when they are secured, you'll feel a little kind of a click, and you'll hear the click too. That lets you know that the fender's actually sucked in via the hardware. So let me set the camera up and I'll show you guys and gals how easy it is to mount them. Again, there are 6 total points of mounting as far as the new inner liner goes in here. You've got 2 in the front. You've got these 2 up top, which actually sit right here. You've got 1 more back here. And then obviously last but not least is the one down below. So let me get the camera set up. I'll throw that in there and then I'll show you guys the final product. All right, guys, so once you get the liner itself put together, Quake does provide you with all the hardware. The front driver side is actually 3 pieces, so you have the front section, this kind of back corner section, and the lower section. Obviously, each one of them does have the areas to mount them, and then they do provide you with the hardware, just like the rear, to kind of pop in that little piece that you can powder coat or paint a different color. I left it as is. I think it's kind of neat, kind of pops a little bit in the wheel well, and shows off the logo pretty well. So getting these back in here isn't really that tough, but it does take a little finesse, because the last thing you want to do is worry about not getting it in there right the first time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up top, and all I'm going to do is pop one of these onto my wrench, and then I'm going to pop it inside the opening right here, and as soon as I get it, got a little click, and that's it. So I'm gonna do that 5 more times. Obviously I have the 2 down low in the front, 1 more up top, the 1 back here, and then the 1 down low. Now, this one back here does take a little bit of finesse on both sides, actually, both driver and passenger. But once it's in there, it's good to go. So what I'll do is, I've got the 1 up top. I'm gonna pop in this one down here, like so. And that one's in. And then I'm going to get this one in up here in the upper right corner, if you're facing the wheel well. You feel that little snap. And then I'll get this one. And then last but not least, I will get that bottom corner in. That one's good. And get this one down here. And that's it. I'll get this one installed. And that's all she wrote, guys. It is in. So let's take a look and see how it looks. All done. Front and rear, Quake LEDs installed, and I couldn't be happier with the product. All right, guys, here we are. All done, front and rear. Got the factory flare split. Got the quick release American Adventure Lab inner fender liners installed. Got the Quake LED sequential smoke turn signal installed, all plug and play. The nice thing with that setup is there's no hyper flashing or lamp out messages or anything. I did undo the battery when I installed them, so maybe that helped, not really sure, but knock on wood, everything works just like factory. Moving out back, did the same thing, installed the American Adventure Lab quick release liners back here as well, and split the fenders. And as an added bonus, I did pick up about 1 inch of usable space between the tire and the factory flare, so that way when I'm wheeling, I do get a little bit more articulation out of it before I make contact with the flare. And then up front, I picked up about 1.25 inches of space from the tire to where the factory flare sits now. So I would say form and function all in one, and it just looks awesome. So next up will probably be a bumper and winch, which will probably bring the front end down a little bit, which I'm okay with. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, like, subscribe, and share. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And until next time.